There comes a moment in every life when the noise fades, the world becomes distant, and a strange silence fills the mind. It's not peace, it's not clarity, it's an emptiness, quiet, heavy, and almost frightening. People often assume an empty mind means calmness, but in psychology, emptiness is rarely calm. It is the silence that comes after too much thinking, too much feeling, too much pain, too much pretending. It is the kind of silence that doesn't soothe you, it exposes you. Some people are not mindless, they are overwhelmed. Some are not blank, they are broken. Some are not peaceful, they are mentally exhausted, psychologically detached, emotionally numb. And in today's world, this emptiness is becoming a hidden epidemic. People walk around smiling, but inside, there is a void created by emotional fatigue, suppressed thoughts, and a lifetime of carrying more than their soul can hold. Today, we dive into the dark psychology behind people who live with an empty mind, not because they lack thoughts, but because they've lost the energy to feel them. Let's decode the truth. People believe that an empty mind is a sign of weakness, laziness, or lack of intelligence, but psychology paints a different, darker, more complex picture. The truth is that an empty mind often belongs to a person who has carried too much for too long. The mind does not go blank by accident. It goes blank when it reaches a point where thinking becomes painful. When the emotional system becomes overloaded, the brain activates a quiet shutdown, creating a psychological numbness that feels like emptiness. It is not that these people have no thoughts, it's that their mind has stopped engaging with them to protect itself. Think of the human mind like a machine that constantly processes emotions, memories, fears, expectations, and responsibilities. When this machine runs for too long without rest, something begins to break down. At first, the signs are subtle: tiredness, irritation, difficulty focusing. Then the emotional storms become more frequent, the thoughts become heavier, anxiety becomes louder, and the person begins to drown inside their own head. The brain is not built to endure endless pressure, so it creates a survival mechanism. It silences itself. It empties itself. It shuts off unnecessary thinking the way a computer shuts down when it overheats. This is why people who seem empty-minded are often the ones who once thought too deeply. They are the ones who overanalyzed every situation, cared too much about people, worried constantly about outcomes, carried emotional responsibilities that weren't theirs to begin with. They were the strong ones, the responsible ones, the attentive ones. But every strong person has a breaking point. And when that breaking point arrives, the mind doesn't explode. It collapses into silence. This emptiness feels like a void, but deep down it is a form of emotional protection. It shields the person from further psychological damage. It prevents them from feeling the full intensity of stress, heartbreak, or disappointment. People with an empty mind are not drifting. They are recovering from a long internal war. Their silence is not a lack of thought. It is a sign that their mind is healing in its own quiet, invisible way. Another reason the mind empties is because of emotional fatigue. Humans were not designed to constantly absorb pain, arguments, failures, and expectations. When a person experiences too many emotional battles back to back, their emotional system becomes overwhelmed, and the brain begins to feel numb. This numbness creates a quiet space inside the mind where no thought seems important anymore. The person stops reacting because they have reacted too many times before. They stop caring because caring drained them. They stop thinking because thinking hurt. Psychology calls this a cognitive shutdown. It's not a disorder. It's not a flaw. It's a coping mechanism, a way for the mind to catch its breath. People experiencing this may appear distant or disconnected, but inside, they are simply exhausted by the weight of their inner world. They are not empty. They are conserving energy. In reality, people with empty minds often have the deepest emotional history. They have carried truths that were too heavy, fought silent battles no one saw, survived emotional storms that left them drained. The emptiness you see is not a lack of depth. It is a temporary pause, a mental silence created out of necessity, not choice. And if you look closely, behind that quietness, there is still a spark, a part of them waiting for strength to return. Their mind isn't empty, it's resting, it's repairing, it's preparing to rise again. There is a kind of silence inside some people that you can't hear but you can feel. It's the silence of someone who has felt too much, too deeply, for far too long. When a person repeatedly experiences emotional overload, the mind begins to create a barrier, not to keep others out, but to protect what remains of the self. This barrier is what psychology calls emotional numbness, and it often disguises itself as an empty mind. But emptiness is not the absence of emotions. It is the absence of access to those emotions. The person hasn't stopped feeling. They've simply reached a point where the feelings no longer rise to the surface. Imagine pouring water into a cup until it overflows. Eventually, the cup can't hold anymore, no matter how much you pour. The same happens with the human emotional system. It becomes full, overflowing, unable to process anything new. So, the mind shuts the door. It becomes quiet. It becomes empty. This numbness is not chosen. It is automatic, a natural defense mechanism triggered by a mind that has absorbed too much pain. Some people experience heartbreak so deeply that their emotional sensitivity becomes a wound. Others care for people who never care back until their empathy becomes exhaustion. Some go through trauma that steals their emotional responses, and some simply hold the weight of their life alone until they no longer feel the strength to react. To the outside world, they appear calm, unbothered, emotionless. People may mistake their quietness for indifference, their lack of reaction for not caring, but inside them there is a different story. A story filled with suppressed emotions their brain refuses to let rise because it knows that another emotional wave might break them. Their numbness is not a weakness. It is an armor, a shield, a psychological pause. What feels like emptiness is actually protection from overwhelm. Their mind is not empty because nothing matters. Their mind feels empty because everything has mattered far too much for far too long. If you have ever watched someone stare into space with eyes that seem to see nothing, understand this: they are not blank. They are internally overloaded. Their thoughts run so deep that the surface becomes still. In dark psychology, this numbness is one of the most powerful defense strategies. It allows a person to detach from situations that would otherwise destroy them emotionally. It creates distance from people who drain their energy. It helps them survive heartbreak, betrayal, manipulation, or repeated disappointment. When the heart cannot take any more, the mind steps in. It cuts the connection between stimulus and emotional response so the person can function without collapsing. But emotional numbness also traps the person in a quiet internal prison. They struggle to feel joy, passion, excitement, or even sadness. They become observers of their own life instead of participants. Their laughter feels forced. Their happiness feels artificial. Their days blur together because nothing touches them deeply anymore. And the worst part, they miss the version of themselves who used to feel everything intensely, but they cannot bring that version back on command. The mind does not reopen emotional access until it feels safe. Yet behind the numbness, there remains a quiet depth, a sensitivity waiting for the right moment to return. Emotional numbness is temporary. It is the body's way of protecting the soul from further harm, and when healing begins, emotions slowly return, not all at once, but in small waves, like a heart learning how to feel again. People with an empty mind are not cold or disconnected. They are wounded, they are healing, they are gathering strength, and their numbness is simply the quiet chapter before their emotional rebirth. Silence is often misunderstood. People assume that when someone stops speaking, stops reacting, stops engaging, it means they have nothing to say. But the truth is far more complex. Silence is rarely empty. In dark psychology, silence is a language, a form of communication that reveals more about a person's inner world than their words ever could. People who appear to have an empty mind are often the ones whose silence holds entire stories, unspoken fears, hidden wounds, and deep observations. There comes a point in life when a person realizes that speaking does not guarantee understanding. They may have explained their feelings before. They may have cried for help. They may have tried to express their pain, their needs, their truth. But when their voice was ignored, dismissed, misunderstood, or used against them, the mind learned something powerful. Silence is safer than vulnerability. People who fall into silence are often those who used to speak the most. They were the ones who tried to fix relationships, who tried to express their emotions, who tried to make others see their point of view. But every time they opened their heart, someone mishandled it. Over time, the mind concluded that silence is protection, silence is control, silence is the only space where they cannot be hurt, judged, or manipulated. This creates the illusion of an empty mind. Their face becomes calm, their eyes drift away, their reactions fade. It looks like they don't care, it looks like they're disconnected, it looks like nothing affects them. But quietly, silently, they are observing everything. They are analyzing every tone, every gesture, every inconsistency. The mind that appears empty is often the one that is working the hardest, processing everything internally instead of externally. Silence becomes a shield because it removes the need for emotional performance. When a person is tired of proving their worth, tired of defending their feelings, tired of trying to be understood, silence becomes a sanctuary. It is the one place where they don't have to justify themselves, where they don't have to pretend, where they don't have to fight to be heard. There is also a deeper truth. People who are silent often see through things others miss. They notice patterns, energies, and intentions. They read between the lines. They pick up emotional signals that loud minds cannot perceive. Their silence is not emptiness, it is awareness. It is clarity. It is the focus of someone who has learned to observe instead of react. And yet, the world tends to misjudge them. People interpret their quietness as a lack of confidence or intellect. But silence is not ignorance, it is strategy. A silent mind is a cautious mind, a protective mind, a mind that has learned survival in a world that talks too much and listens too little. So when someone goes quiet, don't mistake it for emptiness. Silence is their language, their shield, their invisible armor. And inside that quietness is a depth that most people will never understand. People often misunderstand those who appear to have an empty mind. They assume these individuals lack depth, passion, or awareness. But the truth is the complete opposite. The people who seem mentally blank are often living on a deeper psychological level than anyone around them. Their quietness is not emptiness, it is depth that has overflowed. Their stillness is not simplicity. It is a mind that has traveled too far inward to waste energy outward. Most people speak before they think. They react before they reflect. But the so-called empty mind belongs to those who think so deeply, so intensely, that the outside world can no longer keep up with their internal pace. Their silence is a sanctuary they have built after realizing that the world rarely understands the complexity they live with. These individuals feel life more intensely. They don't brush off experiences, they absorb them. Every emotion sinks deeper. Every disappointment stays longer. Every truth hits harder. The mind becomes a container of countless unprocessed feelings, memories, and insights. And when the container becomes full, the surface seems empty. This is why their expression looks detached. There is too much happening inside for anything to show on the outside. People with this kind of emptiness often understand human behavior the best. They notice the way someone's eyes shift when they're lying. They sense the heaviness in someone's voice before others even realize something is wrong. They feel emotional tension in the room before anyone speaks a word. Their mind is always decoding, always perceiving, always absorbing. It is not empty, it is overloaded with unspoken truths. This depth also makes them see life differently. They do not chase noise, drama, validation, or attention. They find meaning in things others overlook, a moment of silence, a sincere gesture, a subtle emotion. Their emotional radar is sharper, their awareness is broader, their thinking is heavier, and because their inner world is so rich, the outside world often feels dull or disconnected. This creates a psychological distance. They participate in conversations, but internally they are watching, analyzing, measuring every detail. They engage with people, but a part of them remains detached because they've learned how unpredictable and disappointing people can be. Their emptiness is not disinterest, it is protection from the overwhelm of their own depth. What others call emptiness is often mental exhaustion. The constant analyzing, feeling, observing, and thinking creates a quiet fatigue. The person retreats inward, not to escape life, but to manage it. Their silence is a space where they can process the weight of everything they absorb. The darkest truth is this: their depth is both a gift and a burden. It allows them to understand people more than people understand themselves. But it also isolates them, because few can meet them on that level of psychological intensity. So when someone seems distant, blank, or detached, don't assume their mind is empty. Their silence may be full of storms, their calmness may be full of chaos, and their emptiness may be the deepest place their soul has ever traveled. So when you meet someone whose mind seems blank, whose eyes look distant, whose voice is quiet, remember this: they are not empty, they are full of battles, full of memories, full of unspoken truths. Their emptiness is not a void, it is a shield, a pause, a reset, a psychological timeout, created by a brain that has carried too much for too long. Behind every empty mind, there is a story, a wound, a transformation, and sometimes the quietest minds are the ones that roar the loudest inside.